Will the Committee on Budget please come to order? It is 9:02 a.m. and on Tuesday, August 20, 2024. I would like to welcome our committee members. We have our Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Council Member Say, and Committee Vice Chair Wire is on his way, and I would also like to welcome Committee Member Talba. We do not have any members present remotely by video conference, so moving forward, pursuant to Section 92-3.7, the Hawaii Revised Statutes, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology, with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda via two ways, remotely and in person in the council chamber. Remote and in-person oral testimony will be allowed when the agenda item is taken up. Before testifying, each person shall state their name, and each person may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. I will then give persons who have not registered an opportunity to offer testimony. Please utilize the raise hand feature on Zoom to be called upon. For those joining us by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak, and I will then identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Some friendly reminders and tips: please video conference from a quiet location if possible, and if you are also watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your television at the time you're called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. Once all the remote testifiers have testified, I will then proceed to in-person testimony in the council chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at remote meetings to be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber, I will then ask that member, in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, that the meeting will be automatically recessed if we lose audiovisual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we re-establish contact. Therefore, I will please ask the member to announce beforehand if they will be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Members, Bill 48-2023 has been canceled and will not be considered. For written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. And as a courtesy, please silence or turn off your cell phones. With that, moving forward to agenda item number 1, we have for action Resolution 24-196, which confirms the appointment of Malia Hampshire to serve on the Grants and Aid Advisory Commission of the City and County of Honolulu for a term expiring on January 14, 2025. Members, we do have the appointee with us today. If I could please have appointee Hampshire with us, step to the microphone, please, and press on/off. Thank you.
Aloha, good morning. Aloha, Vice Chair Kia Aina. Aloha, council members. I'm Malia Hamshold. I live in Kailua, Oahu, Ko'olaupoko, in Council Member Kia Aina's district, and I am applying for the commissioner position for the Grants and Aid.
Thank you. Do you have any other further background that you would like to share with us?
Sure. You know, I come from very humble beginnings. I'm from the island of Maui, and so I know how important grants and aids are in improving the quality of life for the residents of the city and county of Honolulu. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college, so I know how important this commission is. I bring a small business background. I'm a small business owner, so I know the importance of, meeting commitments and to ensuring that the budget and people meet requirements. The grant applicants meet requirements to make sure that the funding is expended appropriately. And all of those different experiences help to highlight what I would bring to this commission.
Thank you very much. Members, does anyone have any questions for the appointee? Okay, thank you. I have a question. Let's see here. How do you believe that your background and skill set will contribute to the role on the Grants and Aids Commission?
Okay, so like I was saying, my humble beginnings. I know how important the grants are to the people of the city and county of Honolulu. And my background as I'm also a kumuhula uniki ailolo, so I bring the cultural perspective to the background, which I believe is the foundation of everything that we do. So I believe that all those combined experience will help to provide the insight and the guidance for this commission.
Okay, thank you. And do you have any goals when you do, if and when you do enter the Grants and Aids Commission?
So definitely to abide by the guidelines as set forth by the city. So to to set forth to follow within the guidelines to award grants to those who meet the requirements. I have a special place in my heart for underserved communities, socially and economically disadvantaged communities, kupuna, seniors, obviously arts and culture, because I'm a kumuhula. So those are some of the things that I see as priorities for this commission.
Okay, thank you.
Mahalo.
Do you have an example, do you have any experience with the Grants and Aids Commission itself?
Not this particular commission, but I worked formally as a trustee aide for the chairperson of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. So we would review, dozens of grants, hundreds over the years. I'm just learning the specific criteria for the city and county of Honolulu, but I'm very well versed in reviewing grants.
Okay, that's great to know.
Thank you.
And as for the criteria, what have you learned before you've come to the council about the criteria for grants and aids?
So I'm learning about the tier 1 and tier 2, up to 5 to 10,000 for special events and things like that, and then the second tier. Basically just, ensuring that they're meeting the criteria to be awarded the grant.
Okay, thank you. And you also know the different types of organizations that are required to receive a certain amount of money or grants, correct?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then also, the council just adopted a few weeks ago a resolution that I authored, but was I would say suggested by, or recommended, I should say, by the Grants and Aids Commission from the last fiscal year. That resolution was 24-118.
Okay.
Do you happen to know about it?
Is that the one to reduce the budget to 150,000 per awardee?
Yes. So it
Yes,
would increase it. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Or decrease. Yes. Thank
Decrease.
you.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, wait. Okay, perfect. And so with that adoption, I do think it is a policy decision by the council. It does change. I've seen it change up and down, mainly to increase back in 2020. And we saw that I think about 24 or so less nonprofit organizations were able to receive funding. So that was my goal when I introduced it, and also I supported the recommendation by the last Grant and Aids Commission. So I just wanted to share
Yeah,
that.
that's wonderful. That way we can reach more people and more community organizations, with that funding amount.
Thank you. I also
Thank
wanted to just note that I look forward to, if and when you are approved, the next recommendation report, because as you can see, as a member, I reviewed that, and legislation came from that, and policy changes came from that. So I look forward to that, and I hope that you will be able to commit not just the meeting time, but also the possible policy changes or process changes necessary to report in a recommendation report.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions? I would also like to welcome Committee Vice Chair Wire. Okay, thank you. Okay, we will now move forward with remote testifiers. Is there anyone online who wishes to testify? Anyone online who wishes to testify, please use the raise hand feature or *9 to raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we will now close remote registered speakers. Is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Okay, none. Okay, moving forward with in-person testimony in the council chamber. Oh no, that's not it. We don't have any registered testifiers, but is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify? Please line up at the microphone. Oh, okay. We have Angela Young.
Aloha, City Council. I just want to testify for that nominee. I just want to be supportive. I'm not going to testify for everything.
Thank you.
That she can provide a roadmap for the grants. And working with OHA, she can provide knowledge such as the speed of distribution is super important of the grants from the government to the nonprofit. That's only moving it to the middleman, right? Nonprofit, they distribute it again. And working directly with grants in the OHA trustee's office will be a good background to facilitating this grants and aid advisory commission process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none, moving forward. We are back in discussion. Members? Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Malia, for your willingness to serve on this commission. As I mentioned previously, I had the privilege of working with Malia when she was at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and so I know with her background there, as well as the state legislature, as well as her business background and being a kumuhula, I think she brings a well-roundedness to the composition of the commission. The most important description that she talked about with regard to her lens and how she looks to serve is to look at those underserved, both socially and economically. I think it's also very important that on the Grants and Aid Commission, that you look at the issue of equity in how the funds are being distributed historically. I don't believe that some of the big organizations should expect that they get funded every year. And in fact, I hope that you use your lens and your background to make sure that those underserved nonprofit organizations, many who actually still need to build some capacity, are given a fair consideration. And another requirement for the overall awards is that each district is given a certain percentage. And I'm hopeful that you would also take that into account, because I know that all of our communities have needs. And among our districts, I think you're going to get a good bearing of the areas within our districts who are more underserved than others. And as a result, it should be reflective of the nonprofit organizations where the funds go. So anyway, again, I appreciate your willingness to serve. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any other further discussion? Members, any further discussion? Does anyone have any? Councilmember Say, do you have a question for the city administration?
No, just asking Councilmember Kiana, did the individual leave? That's why I asked. So whatever Councilmember Kiana said, she did not hear your commendations. Thank you.
It's okay, we'll send her the YouTube link after, yeah? Okay, does anyone have any questions for the Director of the Department of Community Services? We have Director Anton Krucky here. Any questions? Okay, okay. I actually have a question. Sorry, Director Krucky. Hi, Director Krucky, do you have any recommendations for the incoming Grants and Aid Commission? And actually, would you be able to share what appointee opening that this appointee is filling?
Thank you for that question, Anton Krucky, Department of Community Services, Chair and members. So I can't remember off the top of my head the exact commissioner that this is replacing, but this is really a one-year piece within a follow-on piece. So we're really looking for Malia to be with us for 5 years at least in serving. And I think that would have that continuum of the discussions that we were having.
Thank you. And with the Department of Community Services overseeing that commission, would you be able to share a little bit about the time commitment as well as the length of time within the year that each of the commissioners is expected to dedicate time to?
Well, as Malia is experiencing right now, she's doing a lot of homework. We sent her a lot of materials on what has to occur, but the time commitment really begins in December. And through December through February, there's quite a bit of time. They meet and they have some very long discussions. They're very diligent about what they do. We manage those meetings. So for those 3 months is quite a bit of time. And I think the community should really appreciate what they do during that time. And then after that, we start the process with you. And now we've kind of straightened up some things because of the last resolution of tapping it out, because we've had to redo all the contracts, right, that we had where they were approved and then we changed. So now we're at 150, and I think that will also streamline it, so we appreciate that as well.
Thank you. I do also want to note that there are some nonprofits that probably haven't seen funding for the past few years or so, and so they reach out to the council, but due to a charter amendment back in one of the ballot questions before, it did change the makeup or the composition of how grants and aids are ushered forward. Would you be able to share what the process is currently after that charter amendment?
I'm sorry, Chair. I really don't know that exact process. Really, Shane's pretty close to that. He called in sick today, so that's why I hustled down here to be here. But I will say that, when we start giving these processes out, we do have organizations that don't apply. And then they come to us after the period of time, because once the applications are closed in the fall, we can't really do anything until the next fall. So I know we've had one neighborhood board asked us to come present, and so I just would like to offer that. If anybody else would like us to come and present at neighborhood board meetings or other meetings that you have, town halls on the GIA process, we'd be very happy to do that.
Thank you for offering that, Director Krucky. That is actually really awesome. Okay, thank you. My next question is in relation to moving forward with the adoption of Resolution 24-118. How will that take effect with the new Grants and Aid Commission starting in December? Is it just a quick policy change? Will it change on their criteria list and how they score an X amount of organizations?
Well, I think, thank you for that question. I think it just sets the threshold for the discussion. So people don't come in with expectations that it could be this, it's unknown about that. So I don't think it actually streamlines it, because people will start with an expectation of a limit, and then we can manage from there.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad that it streamlines that, and I look forward to the report, as the recommendation report by the commission as well. And thank you very much.
Thank you, mahalo.
Thank you. Members, okay, Council Vice Chair Kia-Ina.
I'm sorry, did I miss the time frame? Did you say when the next award process is going to be issued? The solicitation?
Thank you for that question. We're in the process now of issuing the contracts from what was awarded in the spring. So, on my desk are all the changes back to 150, and we've been issuing those contracts. So we're starting up with those right now, and then we'll start taking applications in September and October for the following year.
Yes, but that's right around the corner. So time frame. I guess time frame when? September, October. Do you have a deadline of when you're going to announce it? And then what will be the, once you announce it, is that a 30-day window or a 60-day window for applications to be submitted?
That's a good question. I thought it was spelled out on our website for the sequence of events, but if it's not, we'll make a clear announcement.
Even if it is, you're here in front of me, so I think it's logical for me to be asking you that. And the reason is, I would like to take you up on your offer to have a Zoom town hall, because that's the only way we're going to get new nonprofits to apply. And so I would work backwards. So I don't know if it's 30 to 60-day window. So if I have an idea, which say it's September, then I would start working with you and your team to have a town hall, and then the X day. I doubt that it would be 30 days. It probably is 60 days. But your staff can follow up with my office directly.
Yes, we'll follow up your office, but if you plan for September, you'll be way ahead of the time frame, so we'll be in good shape. But we'll issue that time frames and send it to all of the council members.
Okay, no, well, if it's September and it's 60 days, right, then I wouldn't do it immediately. I could maybe then wait till October, yeah?
You could. It's just the application has to be on a certain deadline. That's
Yeah.
the process. So it's not, they just have to occur. We've had situations where people run up to submit their applications and they're 30 minutes late and we can't
No,
accept them.
no,
So
I know. So
that
again,
is key.
since we're trying to help those nonprofits who normally don't get help, they're gonna need some technical assistance in applying.
Okay, so we'll publish the whole time frame. Maybe we'll give you the whole year calendar.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Members, any other questions or discussion for either the director or the appointee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Members, the chair recommends that Resolution 24-196 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you. Moving forward to agenda item number 2, we have Bill 36, 2024, which authorizes the issuance and sale and specifying certain terms of wastewater system revenue commercial paper of the City and County of Honolulu in an aggregate outstanding principal amount not to exceed $400 million outstanding at any one time for the purpose of refunding all or a part of any outstanding wastewater system revenue indebtedness of the City and County or paying the costs of any equipment or other improvement authorized pursuant to any capital budget ordinance relating to the wastewater system of the City and County, authorizing the Director of Budget and Fiscal Services to determine certain terms of such commercial paper, providing for the retirement of any indebtedness to be refunded, and providing for other actions related to the issuance, sale, and delivery of such commercial paper. So basically, we're not allocating or appropriating anything, we're literally authorizing. Okay, next we have Director Kawano from the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services.
Good morning, Budget Chair Cordero, honorable council members. Thank you for allowing me to make some short comments on Bill 36. I want to thank council members for this meeting to further discuss the importance of having a commercial paper program for our wastewater capital improvement projects. As Budget Chair commented earlier, it's an authorization to enter into a commercial paper credit facility, up to $400 million, upon which we can draw when needed and when advantageous for the city from a debt service standpoint. I don't have further comment, but I'll be here to take on questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? I know that we had a committee already on this and where we had extensive discussion, as well as a council meeting, as now back to another committee. So I know that we are exhausting the discussion, but I do have questions for the director. Okay, does the city or yourself as authorizee or authorizer, I don't know the word term, sorry. Does the city intend to transmit a resolution for the council's approval for the issuance and sale of the commercial paper for the purposes of paying the actual cost of the equipment or any other improvement authorized pursuant to any executive capital budget ordinance relating to the city's wastewater system?
As of right now, we have no plans to use the commercial paper, so a resolution is not forthcoming. If we can get the bill adopted, what we will do is go through a competitive solicitation process to secure credit line facility proposals for the issuance of commercial paper from financial institutions, such as Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, who else do we talk to? We've worked with Citigroup. We've worked with Deutsche Bank. So it'll be competitive, and we will select the proposal that's most advantageous to the city for such a program. Upon that time, which is probably anywhere from 4 months to a half year out, we would then, assess whether or not we would need to use the commercial paper facility.
Okay. And so, but it would not have to come through as a new resolution.
I don't believe so, because it's a short-term facility, no more than 270 days in length. And typically, it would provide short-term bridge financing, until we can issue bonds, revenue bonds for the wastewater system that typically go out 25 to 30 years.
Okay. But that's not related to any capital improvement project or any equipment, right?
If we do draw on the credit line and issue commercial paper, it would be related to what has been approved by council in our CIP appropriation.
Okay, so it would have already been budgeted for then?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and so, if it's needed in the next fiscal year or 5 years, it would go under E&V's capital improvement project budget?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't just draw from any of this 400 or 53 million, right?
Yeah, it would have to be tied to what we need specific to wastewater improvements that are reflected in our budget.
Okay, so I understand then, so I understand why another, or a resolution thereafter wouldn't be needed, because it would then be budgeted for and documented as equipment or capital improvement project.
Correct, yes.
Understood, thank you. Oops. And I know that we asked for I asked this back in the first committee, or I think in council, I'm not sure. But what is the current balance of the sewer revenue bond fund?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that information right now. I can submit it in writing. So I could provide the information of the balance of the wastewater fund as of the last quarterly financial statements that we issued to you.
Okay, so quarterly financial report, those are the little the smaller
The
booklets that we
booklets
get.
that we sent out.
Okay, yeah. We definitely have that, but that's only for wastewater itself, as opposed to the actual sewer revenue bond fund, or we can find the sewer revenue bond fund within that report.
There's a separate fund for it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but not separate booklet, yeah?
No.
Okay, got it. Would you be able to help us in the resolution? It mentions references to HRS subsection 49-7 and HRS 49-8. I'm not sure if it's one or the other. If we will be able to check if the citations are the correct citations.
I'm sorry, what pages are those citations on?
Hold on, I don't have my resolution in front of me. One moment. One moment, Director. It is on, hold on, I'm looking at page 4, but it says 49-6. And then I have page, sorry. Maybe your eyes are better than mine.
49-8, you mean?
Okay, page 4, 49-6 and then 49-8 in section 7. And then, let's see. I can't find -7, but I think it might have just been on page 4, -6 and -8.
Yeah, Budget Chair, I can share with you that these references are reviewed by our bond counsel, Oric et al., and Corporation Counsel. So I'm confident that the references are correct. And generally speaking, when you read through the various sections of the bill, if there's a citation to a section
Yes.
of ROH, there's a description after the citation typically that describes what it covers. So 49-8, it says Hawaii revised statutes as amended, and section 3 hereof at such price or prices upon such terms and conditions as the Director of Budget and Fiscal Services shall approve, determine to be in the best interest of the city and county. So my understanding, based on prior readings of these ordinances and comparing to the citation, is that the clauses after the citations describe what the ordinance cover in terms of subject matter. So in this case, 49, it's covering determination of prices upon such terms and conditions that are deemed to be in the best interest of the county. I'm just reading select words, so that would be my understanding of what
Okay.
it covers, and I'm confident that the citations are correct.
Okay, thank you. Just want to note that section 47C-3 in HRS is also on page 4. Not sure, hopefully just a double check with the references, if can, and if not, just let me know, me or my office know.
Will do, thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any questions for the director on this item? Okay, thank you, Director. Moving forward, I will now call up remote testifiers. We don't have any registered remote testifiers. Is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Okay, maybe all the testifiers for this was in Council Vice Chair Kiaina's one. But, okay, so there being no other online testifiers, we are now moved to in-person testifiers. We don't have any registered in-person testifiers. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? Okay, yeah, I know, third time. We've been talking it through and through. Okay, moving forward, any discussion, members? Okay, I support this. Oh, okay, council members say.
Director Kawano,
Director Kwano.
just a question in regards, can you give us any example when the city has used the commercial papers?
With regard to the general fund, we've used commercial paper for bridge financing to fund the city's contribution to the rail program. So currently, we're paying about $9 million a year. Typically, we target making an annual contribution. And we actually sell bonds typically in the August timeframe in most years. So we by June 30 of the year, we may borrow $9 to $10 million to make our contribution, required by the full funding grant agreement that we have, with the FTA and that council at that time adopted.
Director, just for wastewater.
Yeah, well, we don't have anything for wastewater right now, so I'm just explaining how we use it for, general fund purposes.
No, my thought would be, could we not substitute commercial papers by the wastewater sewer fund, which there is such an excess of dollars? That's all I'm saying. Why commercial papers versus you have a surplus of revenue from the sewer fee? Why can't you use that to substitute?
If you take a look at the preliminary offering statement for wastewater for the sewer fund, you'll see that in the next 5 to 6 years, we're going to greatly expand how much we expend because we have to comply with our consent decree and complete our Sand Island improvements to get it to secondary treatment class. So what's going to happen is we're going to run low on sewer cash. So in any given year, if we have this facility, it gives us the flexibility to draw on and issue commercial paper to pay for capital improvements. When we sell the bonds later in the year, typically for sewer, it's September, October, that time frame, we can essentially pay off the bonds and commercial paper and finance through the bonds, revenue bond sale on a 20 to 30 year basis. So long-term financing, at the time we issue the revenue bonds. So that's how it would be used. And we're using it specifically because the cash will be significantly, obligated as we complete Sand Island.
No, thank you very much for that summary because at least those who are here this morning recognize that this particular program will be cash short as far as in the out years. And we don't use real property tax for the sewer fee rates. So just for the general public to be aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Say, and for that information. And thank you, Director Kawano. Members, any further discussions? Okay, seeing none, members, the chair recommends that Bill 36, 2024 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion? My discussion is I would like to thank our Council Vice Chair for holding this discussion in her committee as well. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Next, agenda item number 3, we have resolution 24-205, authorizing a transfer of $800,000 in general fund monies from the support services activity, current expenses, character of expenditure, to the Office of Chief of Police, Special Field Operations, and Investigation Activities in the current expenses, character of expenditure for the fiscal year 2025 to cover shortfalls in these activities. With us from the city administration, we have Major Aquero from the Honolulu Police Department.
Good morning, Budget Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Wire, council members. My name is Elgin Arcaro. I'm a major with the Honolulu Police Department's Finance Division. This resolution 2405 is a request to move funds in between activities to fund the provisos in Ordinance 24-9.
Sorry. Okay, and would you share the purpose of moving it and what shortfalls exactly?
The provisos listed in Ordinance 24-9, specifically the provisos for the Office of the Chief of Police, to support acquisition and use of automated public notification system. The proviso in special fields operations for the Law Enforcement Explorer program, and the proviso for the peer support unit, and the proviso in investigations to fund $100,000 in agricultural theft and related crimes.
Thank you very much. First off, Major, thank you very much for explaining this. Normally, we see these transfers at the end. I do want to share that the different council members actually have put in different additions to HPD's budget in this past fiscal year, especially for actually a lot of these reasons. And, we've heard from the HPD administration, not to include them. And here we are having a transfer for those exact reasons. So as a budget chair, I am a little frustrated because I want to support our HPD and say that we are giving this amount of money, but when we are told not to do it in the beginning of the year or in the beginning of the budget season, and then we're seeing a transfer for those specific reasons is just frustrating for me, and I just wanted to say that. But I do want to support that, these efforts. That wasn't the question, but my question is in relation to each of the expenditure. So first off, you mentioned the automated noticing, right? That's through social media. That's the discussions that we had I believe, in the Committee on Public Safety in the beginning of the year, actually, right? Like, hey, let us know. We want to know like what's going on. We want to make sure that people are off the road after the chases. This is after the chase in the beginning of the year, January 1 or 2, 2024, this year. And so, first off, I super appreciate that that's being highlighted. But with that, why was that not included as a request to include in this fiscal year's budget? This approved fiscal year's budget.
These provisos?
The automated, okay, so for the Office of the Chief of Police, you said it was for automated public notification, correct?
Well,
Why was that included into the proposed budget? Or, if it was too late to include it back in January when we did discuss it, why wasn't it just included?
Immediately after that January 1st incident that you're referencing, the HPD's Information Technology Division began working on improving a system for better public notification, utilizing a website where the public can access, and that website is already being developed to tap into different databases such as the computer automated dispatch system. So it'll be real info that the public can access. We're currently working on that. We're also trying to integrate also our social media mediums to better get the information out there. I may have misunderstood these provisos because it was included in the HPD's budget bill, and based on the verbiage, it seemed that we're going to use monies to fund these unfunded provisos. Was I mistaken?
Okay, so in addition to those programs, because LEAP was there, what was the investigations amount for? What was that for?
It was introduced by Councilmember Tupola.
No. Which one was the investigations amount for, the 100,000? What is this 100,000 transfer being used for under investigations?
Oh, I have Captain Chang from CID to answer what plans they have for that.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Chair Cordero, members of the City Council members. My name is Thomas Chang. I'm a captain with the Criminal Investigation Division. So this is all new to me, so please be patient. So the 100,000 was told to me about agricultural investigations. So we want to combat agricultural theft, which is theft in the second degree, where it'll protect the farmers out in District 2, District 8, and District 4, which is the Waioa, North Shore area to Waianae and Kaneohe, Waimanalo. Basically, that $100,000, we kind of met with all the burglary theft lieutenants, and we wanted to see how we can combat agricultural theft in the districts. And part of it was, we wanted to mirror the Big Island Police Department. So what they did was they purchased scales. So for theft in the second degree is any type of theft of agricultural of like produce weighing over 25 pounds. So what Big Island did was they purchased portable scales. So when they were doing their investigation, they could take the scales out to the scene to weigh the produce to make that theft in the second degree case. So we wanted to use some of the funding to purchase scales for each of the districts so that we can help with agricultural investigations. Also, we wanted to touch bases with the farmers out there. So we wanted to create like an educational pamphlet where we can kind of educate them on how to combat agricultural theft, from strategically placing their storage containers to what they can do to report 911, and basically just touching bases with the members of the farm community, because I think that's what we have to do so that we can get their feedback, right? So we wanted to do that with creating the pamphlets, create warning signs. So part of the agricultural investigations, they have to have warning signs in their property. So it has to say, private property or keep out, to make sure that we can make a solid theft in the second-degree case. So part of the funding, we wanted to create maybe about 300 to 400 signs to reach out to the members of the farm community and help post it and educate them. We also wanted to purchase a drone, right? Because agricultural land can be very big. So we wanted to use the drones to map out the property line with the permission of the property owner. And we wanted to also, if we had a series of agricultural or equipment thefts, we wanted to basically plan an operation utilizing the drone. So those are some of the fundings that we wanted to utilize and purchase equipments.
Thank you very much, Captain Chang. That's a really great update on everything that will be used. I do want to note that along with that, this council, I think it was an amendment by either Council Vice Chair Kiaina or Council Chair Waters, that also put in money to increase that amount of money for HPD, but also for prosecution for agricultural crimes. And so, because if we don't have the other half of the criminal justice system to charge the crimes, I mean, you guys doing your job, so we need that other part, right?
Yes.
So we just want to make sure that when we have our budget, when we're submitting our amendments, I think the intent of the council members adding more money, but it being rejected by HPD itself, was for that purpose. We had the same kind of goal as you guys.
Yes.
So just wanted to state that was my initial reaction of frustration, because we wanted to give a little more, add a little more, because we understand that equipment's more. We understand that fabricating all the signage or whatever you need to do, having that outreach is going to be a little more. So I just want to explain myself there. Thank you for the explanation. It's great to know. I hope we can get more information, updates about that, and any of the committees moving forward about how that's going. So can I just ask for a timeline on when the $100,000 is going to be used?
So I'm learning all about the budget too as I'm moving forward. So from my understanding, I think we're in fiscal year Q1. So I think it's almost done. So we'll probably start. Sorry.
Major Arcaro?
Once ordinance, Elgin Acaro, Finance Division. Once the ordinance 24-9 was passed, my understanding is HPD cannot use funds other than for what's listed in the ordinance for the provisos. So that's why we moved monies around in the early part of the fiscal year, so that we have enough time in the event of the timelines for procurement. So once we have the monies placed in the appropriate activities, we can utilize those funds with a longer timeline within the fiscal year.
Okay, understood. And so how much of the different three appropriations out of the $800,000 are going to be used for equipment? Whether it be the signage or even for anything that's needed for LEAP or anything else that's needed for the automated system? Like how much is going to be used for equipment?
The initial plannings and discussions we've had with the elements involved, there was no mention of any items over $5,000 or equipment or Category C items. While software can be a little pricier, it still falls within Category B.
Oh, okay. So Category B, you said?
Yeah, current expense, CE.
Oh, CE. Okay, sorry. And is there an amount limit for that within HP admin?
We follow BFS rules regarding the procurement guidelines. So same rules, we follow BFS guidelines.
Okay, thank you. And as for the shortfall, how quick did you determine that there was going to be a shortfall just within the second month of the fiscal year?
We took some time to really look at which activities had. We paused on several projects. Some of them being hardware, like upgrading laptops for our executive management. So we're going to pause on that and fund some of these provisos. Other funds were that we took it from was some contracts that were supposed to be executed on July 1st. There was some pause with that. It'll be executed later in the fiscal year, probably around September or in the second quarter. So those contracts are funded for the entire year. So the months that were not used, we captured those funds.
Okay, understood. I have a question relating to last fiscal year. And if you don't have this yet, maybe the prior fiscal year. How much did the department and maybe either of these three, for example, activities lapsed?
That's information I'd have to research deeper to give you a more accurate number.
Okay. Do you know even in the prior fiscal year, 2 fiscal years ago? I don't need the one for this last one.
I'd have to look that up again.
Okay. And if it's an average, you can just give me the average for these 3 activities, yeah? Because it would just be good to know, because if we're doing transfers from, and this transfer is from, let's see, the general fund in support services activity, right? And if it's going to 3 other activities, and we're seeing that these 3 activities have like plenty lapse, can we then move within the activity as opposed to moving from other activities? I know that sounds like a lot of activity words, but I hope you'll be able to understand what I'm saying.
So I hope I can answer your question accurately, but for the movement of monies from support services to the chief's office, it would be support services that actually develop all those programs.
Okay.
So they would be doing it anyway. And
Okay.
historically, support services, because of what they procure, software and things of that nature, they tend to have a larger budget.
Support services, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, okay, got it.
Because of the price of computer software and
Understood.
technologies.
So that's really good information that you just provided regarding support services. Would you be able to share exactly what support services is tasked with under that activity?
Support services includes the vehicle maintenance section, which takes care of all of our vehicles. So when vehicles crash, we have to send them out for repair, so there's a cost factor with that. And the maintenance of all those vehicles as well, there's a cost factor for that. It also includes telecommunications system. Our radios, per unit, they're pretty pricey. And to fund the entire department, that's a large cost. And I'm just highlighting some of the things for each section. Also included in that is our communications division, our dispatchers, our police communication officers, that division. In support services is our ITD as well, and software and computers are pricey.
Do they also do the fabrication of signs like Captain Chang was talking about that needed to be like made or no? Or do you guys work with either DTS or DFM to do that? Or are those done specifically just in-house with HPD? Or are you guys going to contract them out?
This is for I'm sorry, can you
I'm
repeat
jumping
the
to the investigations of 100,000, like for signs.
question? You'll use a 3-quote or
Procurement process.
yeah.
Okay, understood. Okay, members, thank you, Meter Arcaro. Members, any questions for HPD on the transfer to 3 different activities? Council member, say.
Officer Carroll, thank you very much. And I just wanted to say, what did we replace these provisos with what you have in your present operating budget? Did we cut back in your present operating budget this 800,000? Earlier you said these were all legislative mandates, but not funded, correct?
Yes, they were all unfunded
I want the
provisos.
members to understand that. So now you're going down the slippery slope by allowing members to submit their amendments in your budget. Is that the priority of the department and the commission? Most of us did not even touch you guys' budget, feeling that what you folks have submitted is the right budget for you folks. Now you have these type of transfers addressing some of my colleagues' provisos. That's not fair for others that did not put any proviso in. So what impact is 800,000 had on support services? And the director of budget and fiscal service should be here too, because, you know, when we ask these hard questions, we're not getting the right answers. Is it inflated by 800,000? And I'm saying to myself, no. These funds were earmarked for a particular purpose in the operating budget for the department. And you don't have to respond, I just want to put it on record, because we do support the HPD. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Okay, so I guess I have a question in addition to Councilmember Say. So saying that this is a legislative mandate with no funding, were these discussed from the budget, after the budget, or I guess been being discussed for a while?
These provisos?
Or just the programs that's that these transfers are funding now?
When ordinance 24-9 came out and it was reviewed, that's when we started looking within our approved budget to fund these provisos.
Okay, and so that was, I'm sorry, which one? Which was your first reference, 49, what was it?
24-9.
24-9, okay, got it, thank you. And then so when you transfer it, and then you're going to evaluate how much is needed for each program afterwards? I mean, for the next fiscal year? Sorry, excuse me. To budget it for the next fiscal year.
Some programs, such as software programs, our initial estimates were a little higher than what it is now. So some of the savings from that was funded for this year, we grabbed. So
Okay.
there's a bunch of object codes that we picked to fund this $800,000 transfer. And, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you are correct. We usually do transfers at the end of the fiscal year, but for these provisos, we want to make sure that we fulfilled the verbiage for this, and we want to capture that money in the beginning of the year, so we'd have more time to spend down to satisfy these provisos.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And as for the automation portion, for the website or the actual, I don't know if it's the software or if it's the website. I guess it's both, right? Both automations are for, I mean, this automation, public notification will fund both the software as well as the website, you said, right?
ITD is looking at different options right now. So even prior to the July 1st, they were constructing and building something for a better notification.
Will it be hosted on the main Honolulu PD website?
That's what they're looking at as well, honolulupd.org.
I think that would be good because at the neighborhood boards, we tell them about the crime mapping map thing, which you can see on Honolulu PD as well, the website. But then that's just a lot of different websites that we got to direct people to, yeah?
Yes.
So just at my neighborhood board, we're just spewing all these different links, yeah, that I can't even remember all of it. So, and I think what's difficult when you have one of the sergeants or somebody reporting is like, hey, you can check out this one, you can check out this one. But a lot of them are just going to go to the direct website as opposed to, you know.
And I don't want to speak for ITD, but it sounds to me like it's going to be a dashboard where there's one area and then
Okay.
they can just centralize information, and whatever information they want, they can look at that.
Okay, good to know. Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, welcome, Councilmember Okimoto. Okay, did you want to call up Director Kawano, Councilor Say? Nope. Okay. With that, we will now proceed with remote testifiers. We don't have any registered remote testifiers, but is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none. Members, we will now move to in-person testifiers. We don't have any registered in-person testifiers, but is there anyone in person who wishes to testify? Okay, we have a testifier. Please state your name for the record, and you have 1 minute.
Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support for the HPD. So we train with the community policing team for the Kapalama Neighborhood Security Watch. So HPD performs a diverse number of functions required to keep the community safe. If you read the website, it's listed on the website. So for this specific transfer of funds, it will be improving functions and duties in this funding process to assist with the LEAP program and ag crimes. So the funds will tap into those programs. Ag crimes is something the Farm Bureau has been talking about that happens on farmlands, and the goal is to deter crime. Reading the news and the scales will be in Kilo, Kona, and South Kohala to weigh the product and return it to the owners. Lieutenant Durr of Hilo's Community Policing Section reported that for the news, so that's a really good update to hear about the ag crimes and how it will deter crime occurring on farmlands. And yeah, so in strong support.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify? Please state your name for the record, and you have 1 minute.
Aloha, good morning, Chairwoman and council members. I am in support of HPD, of course. Wow, agriculture, thank you for being supportive. The drone thing, that's good mapping. I got a son-in-law's brother, he's a professor that does that with the drones, and it's super effective. I think that's on target with that. And buying scales to take it out to the scene, that's awesome. I wanted to thank the questions, Chairman Se, right? Because in order for all of us to be supportive for you guys, if they have questions, if you guys have that information to give to them, even more so, right? They'll be able to support, because I am in support of HPD for many different things and levels, but especially for the special field operations, investigation activities, and yes, of course, for support system services activity. So if we could have
Thank you.
more information for the councilman's questions or any of the council members' questions, that way it could be even more supportive for us to have.
Thank you. Pua, I know you, but can you state your name for the record? They need.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pua Freitas, Kalihi District.
Thank you.
That's where I reside.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify? Seeing none, members, we are back in discussion. Back in discussion. Okay, just letting you know. Oh wait, I have to do the vote. The chair recommends that resolution 24-205 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward to agenda items 4 and 5. Okay. Resolution 24-06, which approves a grant of easement to Hawaiian Electric Company Incorporated for electrical purposes serving the Honolulu Rail Transit Project over, under, through, and across a portion of Rail property located at 1819 Dillingham Boulevard, Honolulu, Hawaii 96819 at TMK 112003016, as well as Resolution 24-207 approving a grant of easement to Hawaiian Electric Company Incorporated for electrical purposes serving the Honolulu Rail Transit Project over, under, through, and across a portion of real property located at 533 Ka'ahi Street, Honolulu, Hawaii 96817, TMK 115007023. Members, for Resolution 24-207, we have a proposed hand-carried CD1 at OCS 2024-0778/8/19/2024 at 4:35 p.m. Thank you, OCS. Submitted by myself. This CD1 makes the following amendments. It amends the resolution title to read as follows: approving a grant of easement to Hawaiian Electric Company Incorporated for electrical purposes serving the Honolulu Rail Transit Project over, under, through, and across a portion of real property located at 533 Ka'ahi Street, Honolulu, Hawaii 96887, tax map key TMK 115007023. It attaches the additional exhibits to the resolution and makes miscellaneous technical and non-substantive amendments. Okay, with that, we have from the Hart Administration, Joy Manahan, or no, Krista, sorry, my bad. Yeah, please say your name for the record. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Krista Lunzer, Director of Transit Property Acquisition and Relocation for Hart. Today we have a request for approval of resolutions to grant easements to HECO for over 2 properties that's currently owned by the City and County of Honolulu. The first property is TMK 12003-016. It's located at 1819 Dillingham Boulevard. The property is shown here on the left by overview, and then the map showing the easement area is on the right. The easement area is 165 square feet. Hart acquired the underlying property on April 16th of 2014. The acquisition value of the property was $1.1 million. Easement C consists of 165 square feet and will be used for placement of a transformer and protective bollards. The facilities are part of the relocation utility work along Dillingham Boulevard, which is necessary for construction of the rail project. The second easement request is on 533 Ka'ahi Street. Again, the picture of the property overview is on the left, and the easement area is shown on the right. This is 679 square feet. The underlying property was acquired in April of 2010. The acquisition value of the property was $2.8 million. An electrical transformer and a handhold will be constructed within the easement area, and it's part of the City Center Utility Relocation Project, which is necessary to allow for construction of the HRTP. Hart is constructing the Honolulu Rail Transit Project, and it's necessary to relocate utilities out of the roadway in preparation for construction of the fixed guideway system. HECO requires the easements to access and maintain the facilities that are being constructed by Hart. The facilities will serve the public. It is a responsibility of Hart to provide HECO with the property rights necessary for the relocation of utilities due to the project. Therefore, there will be no compensation paid by HECO for the easements. Upon approval of the resolutions, Hart's Executive Director will be authorized to execute the grant of easements to HECO. And then just a reminder of the disposition process. So once the city and county acquires property and it's under the jurisdiction of Hart, we do have the option to recommend to the city council a disposition of an easement for project needs. And the requested easement does not conflict with Hart's use of the project. of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for for Hart, sorry. Go ahead. Anyone? Okay. For resolution 4-206, which is the 1819 one, it states that the grantor is being paid $10 by the grantee. Would you be able to explain that, please?
On the grant of easement itself, it says that? So that is standard language that's put in an easement. There needs to be compensation whenever there's a real estate transaction. There's actually no cash funds being transferred.
Okay. Oh, sorry, that was for resolution 207. Okay. And as well as 206. And who will maintain the easements?
Kiko will be the
Kiko.
the grantee, so that they will be the beneficiary of the easement. The city and county will continue to own the underlying property.
Okay. With the installation of the electrical facilities, will that be impacting any businesses along Dillingham Boulevard or residents?
On these particular properties, or in general, does the construction along
No, I
Dillingham?
think just for the installation of the electrical facilities.
Both of these properties are owned in fee by the city and county of Honolulu, so there's no occupants on these properties.
So it's vacant,
Correct.
like no buildings.
No buildings.
Okay. Will that impact electrical facilities or increase electrical access?
What it
for
will do
others?
is allow for the overhead utilities to be undergrounded.
Okay. Got it. And since these are empty properties, how do you anticipate facilitating the traffic? Will it be mainly on the actual property itself as they are empty? Or is there going to be a plan to close off a part of those 2 lanes in each direction?
I believe the work will all be done within the property itself. There's plenty of room since it is a vacant parcel.
Okay. So it's the one that's like it can fit like 2 homes, right? 2-story homes?
Yes, I believe at one time there were properties there, but they
Yeah.
are long since been removed.
Oh, it was like three properties that were on there, yeah?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay, never mind, it's big enough. Okay, cool. Okay, that's the questions I have. Members, any other questions for both resolutions 24-206 and 24-207? Or the amendment? Okay, thank you very much. We will now proceed with remote testifiers. Is there anyone online who wishes to testify? I do not have registered remote testifiers. Seeing none, members, we are now moving to in-person testifiers. Is there anyone in person who wishes to testify? Seeing none, okay. Members are in discussion. Members in discussion. Okay, we'll move forward with Resolution 24-206 first. The chair recommends that Resolution 24-206 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward with Resolution 24-207, the chair recommends that Resolution 24-207 be amended to the hand-carried CD1 identified as OCS 2024-0778. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? The resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 24-207 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward to agenda item number 6, we have Resolution 24-197, which is urging the city administration to investigate the establishment of a compensation plus program or similar accountable reimbursement plan for officers and employees of the Honolulu Police Department. We do have with us, okay, well, I see Director Kawano first, but I do see listed here Jennifer Wu, Human Resources Administrator, Human Resources Administrator for the Department of Human Resources. I'm sorry, what? Oh, turn on, press on. On.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Wu. I'm here from the Department of Human Resources, but I would like to defer to my colleagues in the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services because I think they've prepared to speak first.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we will then head to Director Kawano. Hold on, I don't have the introducer here. Shoot. Okay. Okay, Director Kawano. Oh, hold on. Can I skip to the next one and then come back to this afterwards? Yeah. Okay, Director Kawano. Never mind. I'm gonna members, with your indulgence, I'm gonna go to item number 7. Oh, he's back. Okay. Never mind. Director Kawano, can you come back up? I'm so sorry. We're still on agenda item number 6. But Director Kawano, stay up there. I would like to kick it over to the introducer of the resolution, Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. And apologies, were we doing questions for the director?
Oh, no, I was trying to stall for you to, if you wanted to explain the resolution or intent, or if you just want me to just ask the director anything.
Yeah, I mean, we welcome the director's position, and I know there's folks here to testify as well. Essentially, if you want to give me wanted me to give an overview, Resolution 24-197 is a pre-tax program similar to the pre-tax healthcare program currently available to county workers. And this program would allow HPD to set aside a certain amount of their pre-tax pay to be able to purchase uniforms and equipment out of the fund. The main difference between this fund and a pre-tax health fund is that pre-tax fund for HPD does not need to be expended by the end of the year. And instead, any remaining monies in the fund will roll over to the next year. And just to simply put it, I think the goal was to make it easier for county workers to fulfill their responsibilities and reduce the financial burden on them as well. And I think Director has already been in conversations with folks in the community, and so this was just, I'll defer to you if you have any updates or positions of the administration.
Thank you, Vice Budget Chair Wire, Budget Chair Cordero, Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. Good morning, honorable council members. Today's meeting, I'd like to share where we're at currently with regard to what we will refer to as Compensation Plus Services, Inc., or CP Plus. It is our understanding that CP Plus is an accountable reimbursement plan for the Honolulu Police Department, HPD officers and employees, whereby the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, will allow an employee an above-the-line deduction for expenses paid or incurred in conjunction with services performed as an employee under a reimbursement or other expense allowance agreement with the employer. Typically, amounts paid under an accountable plan are excluded from the employee's gross income, are not required to be reported on the employee's W-2, and are exempt from withholding and payment of employment taxes. CP Plus proposes that it would provide third-party administration services in this accountable reimbursement plan for participating HPD officers, SHOPO members, and have the city, through the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services, or BFS, through its payroll section, to deduct the participant from the participant's paycheck on a pre-tax basis the amount elected by the participant for anticipated unreimbursed business-related expenses from the participant's spending account. When the participant incurs unreimbursed business-related expenses, he/she will submit the receipts to CP Plus, and CP Plus in turn will reimburse the participant from the participant's spending account. So that's the set aside that's taken out of the paycheck every pay period on a pre-tax basis. For over a year, BFS, the Department of Human Resources, DHR, HPD, and the Department of the Corporation Counsel, or CORE, have reviewed proposals and have had multiple meetings with representatives of CP Plus and SHOPO. Despite repeated requests for a demonstration of the product, CP Plus has not been able to show the city how the application works. Based on months of review and analysis, BFS, HPD, DHR, and CORE agree that the city should not participate in the program based on current information received, and note the following questions and concerns. If one goes to the CP Plus website, it's very clear that the employer or the city would be very much involved in the administration of the reimbursement plan. In the description provided, CP Plus indicates that the city, so that's essentially BFS and HPD payroll teams, will be administering the plan. From this standpoint, they would have to include withholding plan deductions, set up a spending account for each employee, and then process reimbursements to the employees. These proposed tasks will require that BFS and HPD payroll conduct additional accounting, tracking, monitoring, and reconciling every payroll cycle. Unlike the city's existing flexible spending plan that allows participating employees to allocate a specific amount of his/her wages on a pre-tax basis to pay for eligible health care and dependent child care expenses incurred during the plan year, all of which must be paid out during the plan year or lose it, so it's use it or lose it. In comparison, based on information provided, the CP Plus spending account arrangement does not appear to have a forfeiture, use it or lose it requirement. This may result in the unused and excess amounts in the spending account to be characterized as taxable wages. We're not sure, based on information provided, for which the city would need to make appropriate state and federal withholdings. And depending on when recharacterization occurs, the city and participating employees may incur penalties and interest costs for not making the appropriate withholdings, and even have to file amended W-2 forms on behalf of the HPD officers and employees. We have not received any information through CP Plus that would indicate that it would defend and indemnify the city or participating HPD officers, employees for any adverse tax consequences that may be incurred. There are other issues that have not been resolved. For instance, how does this program work with expenses for HPD officers already receiving an allowance under SHOPO collective bargaining agreement? For example, officers receive firearms maintenance allowance of $1,000 per year. If reimbursement is sought and substantiated, is the officer able to seek reimbursement in an amount of, let's say, $200 in ammunition costs under the CP Plus arrangement, even though the officer received an allowance for such an expense? How would this be addressed? Another item, do officers have to declare, state, attest, and verify that the business expense reimbursement claims are only for themselves? We're not sure based on information provided. Thirdly, if the reimbursement is denied by CP Plus, does the participant, does the HPD officer or employee have any right to appeal the determination by CP Plus? And if so, who hears the appeal? 4, because the city is not a plan sponsor or plan fiduciary in any way with respect to this arrangement, CP Plus must specify the work and tasks that it expects of the city, BFS, and HPD teams to undertake this program. as allowed. We feel that we don't really know what we're required to do in our obligation at this point in time. Due to all of the above that I've commented on, we don't feel that we have received the assurances that will be required to handle these critical tasks on behalf of participants who we want to treat, the right way. Given these significant questions and concerns and the failure of CP Plus to answer our questions or address the above, BFS, HPD, DHR, and Corporation Council recommend against the city participating in the CP Plus Accountable Reimbursement Plan program for HPD officers and employees at this time. I'll take questions.
Vice Chair, you still have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Director, for the input. And I just note that the reso was asking that the administration investigate the establishment of either the CP Plus or, other pre-tax programs. And I'm just curious, because it sounds like there's a lot of outstanding questions that exist regarding the program. And so just to clarify your recommendation, you're saying that the administration is terminating the conversation at this point, or there's an ongoing conversation that's happening with the stakeholders?
I think our last meeting was in June. We haven't had any meetings since. Based on information that we have to date, we recommend that we don't proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Wait, Director Kwana, can you say that last statement again, please?
I said based on information that we have to date, BFS, HPD, DHR, and CORE recommend that we do not proceed
With the resolution
CP Plus
or
program.
with this? Okay, so would you state then that the city administration has already been investigating the establishment of this? And how long has that discussion been going on?
We've been having ongoing discussions over the last year.
Last year.
Numerous meetings, yes.
Understood. Okay. Members, any other questions? Okay. Council Vice Chair Kiaina.
Thank you. I actually just appreciate, that was kind of thorough, your explanation. And we don't get that all the time, especially at this outset. So I appreciate it because I have a lot of concerns just looking at it, the resolution, its applicability to one department versus others, and the creation of a system. I've never really participated in a lot of these tax benefits, even when I was in the federal government, because it's kind of complicated. And when I think about HPD, quite frankly, what I'm interested in helping them on is the retention of the senior officers so that it can complement the proposal by the administration for the recruits, because the only way we're going to make a dent in the 400 plus vacancies is if we could help at the tail end and kokua our HPD. So anyway, I just appreciate that. So I share your concerns, and I'm glad that you guys looked into it. If you do something like this, which is already complicated, then my question, of course, is a matter of equity. Why one department versus the others? Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you, members. Any other questions for the director? Okay. With that, we will now proceed with remote testifiers. We don't have any registered remote testifiers, but is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Seeing none, members, we'll now move on to registered in-person testifiers. We have 3 registered. We have Roger McKeague. Please state your name for the record, and I have a minute. Please press on.
Good morning, Chair Cordero, council members. I am Roger McKeague. I rise as an individual in support of this reso. I am one of those members, along with my colleagues, who've been working with SHOPO, who actually entered a contract with CP Plus to implement this plan. We have been going through ongoing discussions with the administration. We would like those to continue. We think that some of the understanding clearly we heard here today were not quite to that point where they understand the fine points of this. we're more than happy to actually do a briefing for the council as a whole to answer any kind of ongoing questions with this. We would like to, part of the last meeting since June, there's been a lot of time scheduling. I think the budgeting process for the city was very interrupting opportunities, shall we say. And we're just happy to try to help this, which is going to allow the police officers to take home more of their own salaries because they're paying it out for work-related expenses, as well as saving the city and county money at the same time on payroll taxes. We appreciate your time, and we are always available to discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we can also, in discussion, call up any of the members to, testifiers too. Next, we have Peter Luke.
Good morning, Peter Luke. Thank you for having me, Council. I think what we forget about sometimes with this, I am supporting this. We are talking about the police officers' own money. We're talking about trying to have them keep more money in their own pockets. With all due respect to Director Kawano, I think there are a lot of points that were missed. We have met, in my recollection, twice, which is not enough to go over all the points of this. And again, we're talking about police officers' money supported by federal tax code, and there's no reason we should not be helping them keep this money in their own pockets. There may be some obstacles to overcome. We have the answers if they will meet with us, sit down and talk with us further. And again, I think there were some misunderstandings. With all due respect again, I don't think Director Kawano has the exact answers or the direct questions. And on 2 meetings, again, my recollection, 2 meetings, you cannot go through everything and answer all of it. We support this. It's the police officers' money, and we need to help them keep it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Luke. I don't want to be a like in between or mediator between agencies, really, but thank you for that sharing. And I'm sure that if there's requests to meet, I'm sure that BFS and HR could be open to meeting. Next, Jonathan Fry.
Okay, hello, my name is Jonathan Fry. Thank you, Chair Cordero and honorable members of the Honolulu City Council. I stand before you today as a representative of the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers. We are advocates here. We are advocating here for the implementation of a tax savings work expense program for the Honolulu Police Department. SHOPO has already entered into contract with CP+, the plan administrator for the program, and the program is designed to set aside a designated portion of income as tax-free to be used for work expenses. It is a program that not only supports our officers financially, but also acknowledges the out-of-pocket expenses that often occur in the line of duty. However, this implementation of the program is contingent on the integration into the city payroll system, and we recognize that. So we need the support of the City and County of Honolulu in order to get this program up and running. Furthermore, we believe that this program, if it proves successful, would be beneficial to the entire city. So to answer that other question, this isn't just for Honolulu. We want to test it out and get it running for Honolulu Police Department. But if it's successful, we would like to see this rolled out for all city employees, beneficial for everyone. So we urge the City Council to consider the positive impact of this program. I'll leave it at that, but thank you for your time, and please consider moving forward with this.
Thank you. And can you state your name again for the record, please?
Jonathan Fry.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I got a question.
Okay, member Toba has a question for Jonathan.
Mr. Fry, you heard Councilmember Kiano talk about retention. Would something like this help retain some of our police officers, and tell me why?
I truly believe it would help retain as well as also recruit. I mean, as Pete mentioned earlier, it is putting money that belongs to our officers back in their pockets. Everybody knows how costly things are getting, and this would be beneficial towards making it more affordable to be here, as well as retaining officers in for a longer period of time.
I also echo the chair, and I hope that maybe we can have more discussion if it's another way of retaining our police officers or maybe recruiting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fry, I have a question relating to the different aspects that were brought up, as it is pre-tax and it comes directly from the officer's paycheck, correct? And then how do you suggest the opt-in, opt-out option or forfeiture of providing that pre-tax? Because let's say they may not want to. Just there might be one or two. I don't know.
As it stands now, this is a contract that SHOPO is going into with CP+. So it is going to be entirely a decision of our membership that we're going to work with them to explain what it is for, whether or not they want to opt in or opt out. It is going to be a voluntary program. It's not going to be mandated, just like other benefits that the union provides to our members. We're just asking for cooperation from payroll in implementing the deductions from our payroll in order to get this plan up and running.
Okay, and I have a question relating, so you're talking about payroll, and that's the main aspect or communication needed, right? But also, would the conversation be needed with ERS as well? Will that, I guess, change the amount that will be going to ERS for the officers?
It would certainly be beneficial to bring them into it. My understanding is it does not really affect ERS, although from your point being there is going to be a reduction in taxable income. So that might have some effect. I'm not an expert on the ERS side, so it's certainly worth a conversation.
Okay. And I was also wondering, that was interesting about the 1,000 per year or month for, is it firearms? I'm not sure what that is, but are there other types of ways that we incentivize or stipend? I don't know the word that it was used for officers in addition. Like, what are all the incentives / stipends that officers receive? And if these discussions were to go in a positive way in addition to this?
So the officers currently do receive some compensation for things, firearms being one of it, motor allowance for those that are in motorized positions. Those types of reimbursements would not be included in CP Plus because they're already being reimbursed. We're talking about non-reimbursed expenses. So there is uniforms, which are reimbursed at 75%, but there is 25% of that cost incurred by our officers. That 25% could be included. And there's other examples we could go on and on with, but it's essentially it's non-reimbursed expenses that would be included in this plan.
How many non-reimbursed expenses, non-reimbursed compensations are there for officers? I think that would have been the best question.
It can vary greatly from officer to officer, but I mean, there's things including supplemental firearms that we use. Officers are allowed to use issued, rifles and shotguns and things that we would need to do the basic functions of our job. However, those are community shared weapons. So the department does allow officers to make purchases of their own personal equipment to use that is more specialized or focused on that individual's personal needs. Those are not reimbursed. So we could be talking thousands of dollars per officer, potentially, depending on their assignment, where they're working, and what their needs are at that particular time and year.
Okay, I'm actually interested because I know that you mentioned, there's mention of need for retention. It would be good to know like all the different compensations, whether it be reimbursable or non-reimbursable. If you would be able to send that over to us as a committee, or me as a committee chair, because we should like let people know that because that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
I'd be happy to provide you with a list of examples of non-reimbursed expenses. And like I said, the stuff that's already being reimbursed isn't going to be included, but anything in excess of that reimbursement. The firearms allotment is, I believe, $1,000 a year, but it's not uncommon to spend much more than that on particular firearms or equipment that's related to firearms. So it can be quite a bit of expenses that come along. And that's just some of the big ones that I'm mentioning. There's other things that we use on a regular basis that would be included. Like I said, I'll be happy to get together a list and forward that along to you of common expenses that our officers would incur.
Thank you, and I would love to share that with the rest of the council members as well via posting that. Okay, so hopefully, can I get that by end of this week? Is that okay?
Certainly.
Thank you. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just looking at what I've asked already. Okay, I think we'll open up for any other questions for the testifiers, this testifier. Okay, Councilmember Say.
Mr. Fry, just one question. Is it possible to give us an example of a municipality that has this program in place?
Municipalities, that would probably be a better question for Mr. Luke or Roger Jeffries, as they're more involved with CP Plus itself. We're just looking at it from the union side, my position.
Okay, please.
Okay, Mr. Luke. Yeah. May I please have Mr. Luke?
Mr. Luke? Other municipalities that are involved with CP Plus?
Currently, we do this on the mainland currently with school systems. So for the council's benefit, we also, right now, are in our third year of a pilot program with the state of Hawaii. So we're doing this right now with a number of charter schools. We've been talking to the DOE. This plan has so many benefits for all walks of life. It really benefits any employee that has any out-of-pocket expenses in the course of doing their job. Federal law does not allow a regular employee to write off any of that. Prior to 2018, there was what was called a 2% rule. You folks are probably familiar with that. If your expenses exceeded 2% of your adjusted gross income, then you could write it off. 2018 rolled around and that went away. You, as an employee, cannot write anything off. Detective Fry here mentioned a few of the expenses. What he did not mention is very, very common expense are cell phones and the internet service. And everyone knows you use cell phone and internet, and everyone knows the expense associated with that. Well, as a common employee, you spend that money, you're taxed on it. You cannot write that off, and you may be using those things for your job. This plan provides income that is the employee's income, and you're allowing them to have it tax-free. And it's wrong if you're not allowing that. I don't care what anybody says. There might be obstacles to overcome. Director Quano and our group, we can talk about them some more. But we do this now in the private sector with great success. The charter schools I mentioned to you, if you want testimonials, we have testimonials. These teachers are taking home more pay, and it's their money. It's not coming out of anyone else. It's their money, and we're just allowing them to have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, Mr. Luke, I have questions. So for when it's pre-tax and then it's either use it or lose it, when it's the lose it part, does that mean it just, I don't know, where does that rest of that pre-tax money go then if you lose it? I'm just trying to understand.
Can I take just a couple minutes to show you how to explain how this thing really works?
Okay.
Because I think there's some confusion here. An employee tells us not exactly, they estimate what they think they're going to spend in a given year out of pocket, which would include cell phone, internet, and any other expense they have. If you're talking about teachers, you can imagine how much money they spend. But just cell phone and internet alone is quite a bit of money, all right? So all we do is we take the dollar amount that they present to us. We take that, we move it into what's called a reimbursable expense plan. We divide it by the number of pay plans that they have, and that money comes back to them on their check, but it's not taxed. The net result is their net pay goes up because it's their money. Okay, so what else is there to talk about here? You have to put it in a payroll system, yes. But how much work is there actually being done in the payroll system? Everybody has medical insurance. You have medical insurance within there. How much work is associated with that in payroll? The only work that we need to know is when people are coming on board to work and people are leaving. We do need to have an initial list of employees, and all we ask for is a spreadsheet so that we can download those folks in the payroll system and the dollar amount that they are estimating they're going to spend. And then we ask them to take a picture of the receipt as they buy things, send it to that file. And yes, we indemnify the city. We take a look at the expenses. The only thing that we've ever seen happen is if an expense gets through and it shouldn't have, and the IRS comes back, the IRS says, hey, you should have paid taxes on that. Okay, then we'll pay the tax on it. But that's it. The benefits far outweigh the negative stuff, if you can even call it negative stuff. But that's how simple this plan is. And we do it now in the private sector and again with the state and the pilot program, which is in its third year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so wait, Mr. Luke, I do have a question also, and something I've been curious about, and I think this is a good time because I normally don't get to have like everyone at the table relating to the officers paying for a fee for service and a fee for service.
Yes.
Yeah, and then which clients do they serve on Oahu for that fee-for-service?
On the private sector side? Or,
I guess just whomever makes a request, I guess.
well, we have private companies that are on this with their employees now. And it's beneficial for both the employer and the employee because the employer saves on the payroll taxes, okay? The state side is the charter school now, and with SHOPO, we started with SHOPO. I will tell you this, we started with SHOPO because I was invited to come present this to them by a tax attorney who was doing the taxes for those officers. And he knew about this plan. He called me and he said, would you be willing to meet with SHOPO? Because I'm doing their taxes, but with the new tax law and them not being able to write anything off.
Mr. Luke, sorry. I was wondering if the officers will be paying for the fee-for-service.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Do you want to know what the fee structure is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The most that an officer will pay is $8 a month, the most. Our benchmark is $1,200 a year. It's on a sliding scale. If it's less than $1,200, it is less than that $8 a month.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Okay, members, any other questions? Okay, we are still back with testifiers. We have Governor John Waihee. Hello, Governor.
Aloha. I'm John Waihee, and I actually worked with CP Plus with the state to answer most of the concerns that were brought up by the budget department this morning. So the first thing was that this program was actually adopted during the pandemic as a way to reduce costs for the employer and increase take-home pay. But essentially, there are a number of things that just from the administrative side maybe needs to be cleared up. First of all, the contract, as you noted, is between the individual. The contract right now is with SHOPO. So SHOPO signed up, and our service is individual by individual. So this is not your normal one-size-fits-all kind of thing. The second thing is that the total amount of reimbursement is cleared by the employer. So we don't just accept automatically that these are the things that need to be reimbursed. They are worked out. That's the one time the employer would be involved. Second time is just getting the system settled. But it's working through DAGs right now, through BNF, very little involvement, if at all, once it gets set up. And it doesn't affect the retirement system because the retirement system contributions are set up by statute. All of that's being cleared with the state. I hope that we have further discussions with the city. We have been inviting them to contact their counterparts at DAGs and at BNF to see whether, in fact, there are the administrative problems that they are concerned about.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Waihee. Any questions? Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify? Please state your name for the record.
Angela Melody Young, CARES. So I'm just going to comment. So the resolution requests to consider the proposal of a creation of a compensation tax program. And the general public can ask, what's the goal? The funding can be for eligible healthcare expenses, right, such as early screening for cancer and living wages. The city could explore this funding option to support officers because of costs of living and supply chain issues since COVID 2019. But there could also be administrative costs and burdens to operate this. So while the goal is good to set aside funding for healthcare and living costs, the structuring of the compensation program may not be ideally a good structure. Through this savings, tax, and reimbursement program to taxable income is a very complicated of a program. So there are other financing structures to consider with union cooperation for a deeper discussion, I think. And if it's a labor and funding concern, it requires a mandate to legislate the funding structure.
Thank you. Members, any other question? Members, any questions? Okay, anyone else who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none. Members, we are back in discussion. Any questions for the director or HPD or SHOPO on this? We have the introducer.
Thank you, Chair. And then also noting, I think you maybe did earlier, co-introducer with Councilmember Tupola as well. I just wanted to ask Director Kawano a quick question. And as he comes up, I'll go ahead and throw it out. I think that as Chair mentioned, I think the exact phrasing he said was we're not the mediator necessarily, or that's kind of an interesting position to be in, but I do think we can encourage folks to come together. And, I think when we're looking at any affected person in any situation in our community, I think the stakeholders involved should definitely be, part of that process and dialogue. And so glad you talked with DHR, CORE, other folks on admin's team, and did note that you had meetings back in June, and just wanted to put it out there, because really what the resolution is asking for is just continued conversation. And so I'm hopeful that BFS would be open to additional conversations, particularly with folks representing our frontline first responders, right?
Oh, yeah. Councilmember Wire, by the way, Andy Kawano again, for the record, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. We definitely will meet in the future. But we've learned that if we meet again, we need to ensure that we have an agenda with objectives that we're going to achieve, because as I testified, we don't have all the answers. We're not comfortable, and I think 4 departments together, essentially administrative and finance staff, we think logically, and we do want to provide benefits to officers for retention, as was brought up, but we also want to do it the right way. So if we don't understand the program, we're not gonna move forward. So, but we will meet if there is an agenda and there are objectives that we're going to achieve.
Okay. No, appreciate that. And I think sounds like that can be achieved. And I know we've already thrown out some potential points of contact at the state as well, but I'm sure once everything's put together, I look forward to a good conversation. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Kwan, I have a question. I know that you had a list of very thorough questions that I guess you are still waiting on information for. Was that already provided in the discussion? Oh, okay, I see head nods, but I would like the response.
No, I read notes that I've accumulated over time from staff, and they've done a good job, analyzing, what we've received. They've kept track of questions that we have. As I mentioned earlier, we have not seen a full-on demo of the program, and the pilot through DAGS for charter schools is limited. Not all the charter schools are on. Select ones are being serviced, but DOE has not been piloting the program.
Thank you. Okay, I do want to note that again, the resolution is to urge the city administration to investigate, which has started. I know that the introducer or co-introducer mentioned that this is to continue the conversations. Director Kawano, do you support that? And I guess does DHR support that as well? Like to continue those conversations, resharing the questions you have, and more.
Yeah, as a team, we have a list of questions. And again, I'll repeat myself. If there's an agenda with a purpose that we can achieve, we will meet. If that's not provided, we're really all busy. We're all super busy. So, but we're open.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, members, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. Where am I? The chair recommends that, what resolution am I on? Oh, resolution 24-197 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Any objections? Objections by Council Vice Chair Kia Aina. Can I have the, oh wait, no, right, I have it. Hello. Okay, so with that, we're gonna go by roll call. Councilmember Kia Aina.
No.
Councilmember Say. Aye. Okay, Councilmember Tolba.
Aye.
Vice Chair Wire.
Aye.
Chair Cordero says aye. Okay, ayes have it. The motion carries. Okay, moving forward, agenda item number 7, Bill 49, 2024, providing property tax relief to certain homeowners. This was introduced by Councilmember Say, and so I would like to kick it over to the introducer of the bill, Councilmember Say.
This measure was basically trying to address the issue of property tax assessments increasing every year that affects our kupunas. And the kupunas are those that have, inherited homes of the past from their great-grandparents to the kupuna to the families today. So this is an issue is trying to address how we could preserve these properties for the future generations of their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think one really great thing, before I move on to the city administration, I think one really great thing that Councilmember Say has been not just instilling in the city, but also in making sure that the city gets what is necessary from the state as well. Councilmember Say, as the introducer, what types of amendments or possible bills do you think would be necessary for us to encourage our state colleagues to introduce or push forward in the future session?
I would say that they should be looking at exemptions or credits that they could provide to these particular property owners. That would be one. The other one would maybe be a general excise tax exemption tied to their personal income.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we will move to the city administration. We have with us Director Kawano from the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services.
Andy Kawano, Director, Budget and Fiscal Services. We are going to be turning in, submitting. I don't believe we made the cutoff written testimony for the bills today, including Bill 49 currently being discussed. With regard to Bill 49, I'm going to share highlights in my written testimony that you'll be receiving. We have concerns regarding Bill 49, which seeks to create an additional exemption based on the increase of assessed valuation over a set percentage amount over the prior year for homeowners with a home exemption for a specified but yet to be determined number of years. Our concerns are as follows. This proposal increases the value of a home exemption for select homeowners, creating tax inequities among the city and county of Honolulu's real property tax homeowner base. There are approximately 153,000 parcels with home exemptions in FY25. The impact of this exemption on tax revenue, in perpetuity possibly, would conceivably shift the tax burden to others if the city implements this measure. Next point, number 2. There are larger residential lots that have 2, 3, or more dwellings on the same parcel, but may only have one home exemption. This bill would allow the other non-owner occupied dwellings that are possibly income producing to be eligible for the additional exemption, causing further tax base inequities. Number 3, the condition to continue this exemption when the parcel is inherited by a single family member creates complications and an administrative burden that would very likely be outside of BFS's current capacity to validate and enforce. Number 4, Bill 49, 2024 does not address home improvements that could increase assessed valuations beyond any set percentage threshold. Our interpretation of the current bill exempts increases in assessed valuation caused by home renovations, additions, corrections of deferred maintenance, and the like. This will again compound possible tax inequity. Number 5, the effective date of this measure would be contingent upon the state of Hawaii providing a specified percentage of state conveyance tax distribution to the city, or increasing the city's surcharge percentage rate on the state general excise tax. If council decides to move this measure forward, BFS recommends setting a sunset date to avoid adverse impacts with subsequent real property tax program changes. The time required to implement changes, including but not limited to system development to properly reflect the incremental increase limit on a partial valuation, will have to be assessed. That concludes my list of concerns. Again, we'll work with council members, but with regard to this measure, we are very concerned about equity, because my feeling is that even if you're you have a property for a long period of time, you're elderly, there are a number of taxpayers that can afford to pay the real property tax, and they should pay it. And they should contribute to paying for services that the city provides. That's my closing. I'll take questions.
Thank you. Director Kawano, before I move into the members, I have a question relating to one of the points about, or suggestions that if we were to enact this and moving forward, that there be a sunset date, but currently there's also a contingency on state law being passed. And I know that I just mentioned like what would the introducer suggest for the state bill to state. And so I think part of that could also be addressed in, I guess, any future state law or state bills possibly too. Do you think that is correct or not necessarily?
I don't know and cannot comment on that. I guess the concern we have is the implementation of this measure would be contingent on something else happening, and apparently it would be effective immediately. Then, at that time, we probably will not be prepared to properly administer the bill. The other concern I have is just general fiscal concerns with regard to balancing the budget going forward. I would recommend, there's so many bills still active, I would recommend that we do a permitted interaction group to look at this bill and all of the other bills that have impact to our real property tax revenue base, because things are going to be tough, next year and the year after. And I'm just concerned that there are a lot of measures that reduce taxes that are out there, and I think we need a strategy on which ones we're going to use that's equitable, and which ones that we can stand behind as a team. So,
thank you, members. Any questions for the director? Council members say.
Thank you very much, Director Kawano. I'll go and talk to the individuals at this point in time about the questions that you have posed to see what their reaction is today. But this is basically for a discussion purpose to see what is the department's position, number one, and number two, what can be done to try to resolve these issues for our kupunas. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Thank you, Chair. I also would like to see a RPT permitted interaction group to look at the totality of all of the RPT bills, especially for any measure that's going to have a impact on revenue, including as well as those that are going to generate revenue, because then we can maybe utilize that mechanism to offset some of the costs by others. But if we do it piecemeal, it might not be helpful. So my question, because it's going to impact the budget next year, is relating to hazard pay. And the reason, Chair, I'm asking this, it's relevant to the budget. Have you guys completed negotiations on the budget? Because I know we provided X amount this year, and I'm worried that we might still owe 25 to 50 million for next year, and it's going to come out of our operating budget. So can you give us a status on that? Because it's going to impact how we're planning for our RPT bills.
Our managing director is having meetings with all of the unions. I've heard recently that he's closer to settling, reaching a settlement with UPW. As you mentioned, Vice Chair, we have 115 million set aside in the 2025 budget in our provisional for hazard pay. It's not going to be enough. We're going to more likely than not go over that. I don't know if it's going to be 25 million more or 50 million more, but we're going to go over that. So my understanding is that the plan is we're going to settle with our unions using a combination of cash and vacation and / comp time. So we're going to be impacted in future years, but it'll help to spread the impact.
But do you guys know if you're going to come to closure by October at least, end of October?
I think that's the goal, in terms of a time frame to have
And the reason it's
number.
important is I'm assuming some of these RPT bills are going to move through the process, and I think we're still contemplating whether we have a permitted interaction group, and it's going to just affect as we all plan for the budget next year. That's all. That's my reason, and it's going to impact the various components of the RPT bills. Thanks.
I agree with what you said. Yeah.
Thank you, Member Senio. Councilmember Toba.
Thank you, Chair. Director, for the last 5 years, what has been the average increase in property taxes for homeowners claiming home exemptions? Would you know that?
No, not as a separate group, but in terms of assessed valuation for residential properties, fiscal years 21 and 22 were relatively flat. And then coming out of the pandemic, that's when we had the 2 years of large increases. So 23, 24, we had huge increases for residential. I believe 9% and maybe like 13% on the assessed valuation side. And then for this year, it was kind of flat, right? It was close to zero. And because interest rates appear to be going down, perhaps there'll be a small increase for the 26 fiscal year. We're gonna cut off on October 1st. The assessment notices will go out on December 15th for next year. There could be a small increase. I'm not sure, but there appears to be a pullback in interest rates because of the expectation that the Federal Reserve banks will approve a reduction of their overnight borrowing rate. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Members, any other questions for the director? Okay. Councilmember Say.
Would the department have any ideas, or the administration, in regards to, let's say, for example, if I was to introduce a measure to pause the exemptions on all real property tax and use that money as a one-time payment for the hazardous pay?
It's possible, but whether or not we can do it with support from the public, I don't know. But it's possible.
Well, these are all of the exemptions that are presently in the ordinance, and my point is that it is an emergency. I'm not saying we're going to repeal I'm just saying, we're not going to give you the exemption for 2 years to pay off that hazardous pay that we are obligated to, and that's it. Then it goes back as far as the exemption. I just bring this up for thoughts as far as revenue enhancements for an emergency situation which we are in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I guess since we're talking about the need for revenue and the interesting, I guess, conundrum that whether it be the state or another county, but mainly the state, has put the other counties in a bind with hazard pay and negotiations there. It's okay, I'll say it. You don't have to say anything about that, but how much time are we allotted to then give the different unions or employees that hazard pay? Does it all have to go out within the next 2 fiscal years? And that's it, pal? Got to be that deadline?
I don't think the payment plan has been determined yet, but if we can get everything resolved over 2 years, and again, some of the payout in the second year, so I'm talking about FY26, could be additional comp time or vacation time for employees, and or comp time and or vacation time for employees that are going to be covered by, the hazard pay payout. So it's gonna, if we can wrap it up in 2 years, great. I think that would be, a big plus in terms of settling and determining the liability that we have. But we're still not totally there yet.
Okay, and the reason for certain bills, well, not this specifically, but for future revenue enhancement bills for the city, is because when we are focusing in the next 2 years and hopefully knocking it out in the next 2 years, is that there's also catch-up for our city services and equipment, right? That not in the next 2 years, but the following years after that, in 3 fiscal years, we're gonna need a lot more money, right?
Yeah, and that's why I've said we're gonna have to make decisions, right? We always say that we're gonna have to prioritize and make decisions. We are playing catch up. We've been playing catch up since our current administration came into place, right? In 2021, there was deferred maintenance, and we continue to have it, and we're gonna have to continue to catch up.
Thank you. And that's why my question to you, when you first came before us in the budget committee, when I was Councilmember Say's vice chair, that when are we looking to look at the rates and enhancement for the rates? Because the catch-up is coming and we have to plan for that, and we have to be realistic about needing to do that and where it's gonna come from. And we don't want it to be for our residents, but we need to also provide the core city services. And if anything, that's where our minds, as if or when we do a permitted interaction group, should be focused on, in my opinion. So just wanted to state that. Thank you. Members, any questions relating to this bill? Okay. With that, Councilmember, oh no, I have to go with testimony. We don't have any registered remote testifiers. Is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Seeing none, we do not have any registered in-person testifiers, but is there anyone in person who wishes to testify? Seeing none, okay. Members, we are back in discussion. Councilmember Say, thoughts on movement?
Can we defer the measure at this point in time, or would you like to move it on for further discussion? And I'll get back to you in regards to the questions that were posed by Mr. Kawano.
Yeah, I think
or
it's...
whatever, Chair, you want to decide.
Okay. Well, good to know. I do think that this is the beginning of the discussion of the bill, so I don't mind moving it forward, having it for public hearing. When it comes back to committee, if we don't have the information or we have a different sense of the bill and a different discussion, then we can, Okay, with that, members, any other discussions? Okay, the chair recommends that Bill 49, 2024 be report out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing, and it will come back. It's not being adopted or anything, so any discussion, any objections, any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving forward to agenda item number 8, Bill 43, allowing certain taxpayers to remit real property taxes through additional installment payments. Director? Okay, I thought you were leaving. Okay, we have both introducers. We have Committee Vice Chair Wire, followed by Councilmember Okimoto here. So I'll kick it over to you folks, and then we'll go to Director Kawano.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'll let Councilmember Okimoto add anything, but generally, I see the value in creating additional installment dates, particularly for those that have the kupuna exemption, because in talking to so many, it's something that's come up time and time again. And understanding that BFS currently has interim collection periods, October, April, June, we felt like, okay, we could put into the bill, pull those dates a little bit closer so they're not as close to the end of budget, cycle. But then, of course, take away the additional interest that folks paying that are accruing, right? Because if you're kupuna on fixed income already having to pay late, you're not going to be able to also pay the extra interest that increases the amount you owe. So that's kind of my thinking in the bill. I'll let Councilmember Okimoto add anything she wants to.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Committee Vice Chair Wire. Same sentiments. We get a lot of concerns from our constituents relating to their limited income, fixed income, and how can we do. And I completely understand. I've been sitting here, and I know that your plight is how do we balance the budget? How do we help our constituents, but also provide the services that we need? And that falls on you having to make sure that we have the right income. So I think this is a good discussion. I thought it was a creative idea. I'm grateful that Councilmember Wire came to me with this. And we're hoping that there's some kind of way that, especially with our kupuna, because they are limited and they have fixed incomes, what can we do to address their concerns when it comes to their payments of the real property tax? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, we have with us from the State Administration, Director Kawano.
Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. For the record, thank you again, Budget Chair. Thank you again for allowing me to comment. We're going to submit written testimony for Bill 43. For Bill 43, which again expands the installment to 4 per year, we have administrative concerns that we'd like to share with you. Each installment payment that we process requires sometimes complex preparatory and service processes that include working with the following entities. We have to work with the print and mail vendor for getting bills out if we decide to send bills out. What we experienced when we did 1 year of 4 installments, I think after the year of the shutdown, 2020, was that there was a lot of confusion. We, on the back end, spent a lot of overtime, especially with, again, elderly taxpayers who got confused. There were quite a few that paid, the semi-annual amount, and they overpaid. So we had to calculate how much they overpaid, and cut them a check back, which is not efficient for our department. So that, that has to be carefully thought through. How do we communicate with taxpayers if we roll something like this out? We have to work with the bank's lockbox collection services to make sure they're ready to go. We have costs, USPS costs for postage and mail for the notices. How many more will we have to do? We're going to have to communicate with mortgage companies to ensure that they're set aside for the mortgages are being funded properly, based on the additional installments. We're going to spend more doing press releases through the Honolulu Star Advertiser to keep people informed as we progress through the program. we're going to have a public counter service that will have to be staffed with more hours throughout the year, and ensure that we beef up our phone service for people that call in, because the change will be, I think, there's going to be growing pains there. In addition to all of that activity, the parcel count of our island, of the city and county of Honolulu, has increased about 8% from 2019 to now. And our staff positions have remained the same. So if we do something like this, along with the other measures that we're talking about, we're probably going to have to increase staffing, get more office space to realistically administer the programs properly. And the same applies here. Currently, the BFS Treasury Division also offers 3 additional interim collection periods in October, April, and June. But to Vice Chair Wyer's point, there is interest that's included on those additional payment dates. The benefit, though, to the taxpayer is that the interest stops, once they make payment. So we do have, additional dates that taxpayers can make payment. And taxpayers are also allowed to prepay taxes at any time. So as soon as they get their bill, they can pay a part of it on that day. And by the due date, August 30th generally, and February 20th, August 20th and February 20th, they can pay the balance. So they can make smaller payments that the department will track without the extra work of setting up formal, installments during the year. So we wanted to share that with you. We did it one time, after the shutdown for the pandemic. To do it continuously will create an administrative burden that we'll have to assess. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have Committee Vice Chair Wyer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, in looking at the admin cost, what's the difference between simply putting 3 dates into the ordinance and waiving interest versus what we currently do, which is have interim collection in October, April, and June, but charge interest? I'm just trying to figure out why there's greater administrative burden for one and not the other.
You're talking about a few that have not paid. Most people pay on time by far.
Just to specify, clarify the question, do we have interim collection periods that BFS has, right?
For the delinquent taxpayers that that are being charged interest on their late payment, yes, we do right now.
Okay.
So we send out notices on those 3 extra dates to help them stop the accrual of interest and penalties. That's why
I think I see where you're going. Just specify the question. I guess I would assume that the answer would then, because there's fewer folks that are paying late.
A lot fewer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas if we do an installment path, then
there's gonna be, if we just talk about residential, with we got about 200,000 parcels, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, more than that. Residential is 153, and we're pushing 270. Oh, Steve's not here.
Yeah.
I think 270,000
Perfect timing,
parcels. I wouldn't be surprised if a majority of the taxpayers decide to pay in 4 installments. So then we're going to have to, to serve them right, we're going to have to bill separately. And, each billing cycle is about, I believe, it is in excess of $50,000, just postage, because our annual budget is in excess of $100,000. So if you double that up, that's all, additional costs, along with staff time, overtime, and so on. So
yeah.
we just want you to be aware of what happens on the back end.
Okay. Would it be easier than just to keep interim collection periods and just waive interest?
I'll let you know. I have to check the legality of that, but it's a discussion point.
Because again, I'm not that my colleagues would sign on, but I'm just brainstorming. we could just codify no additional penalties would be charged for late payments unless they're received by, and we could set a big penalty, well, I don't want to say big penalty, but
Yeah, it has to
something
be,
later in the
whatever we
year,
do has to be fair. And, you know, what about all the people, you know, by far, most people pay on time.
I don't think we're worried about the folks that aren't. Like, we're worried about, like, at least me, you know, the kupuna that have shared about this being the first time they've had to pay late in the recent years, right? And then in addition to not struggling to make that late payment, then they're also having to pay interest. And I think it's completely fair in your position to probably feel like a lot of folks that raise concerns about property tax in general aren't necessarily the folks most hurting from its impacts, right? But I think that's always going to be true because those most struggling aren't going to have time or the resources or even the priority, right? Like if you're prioritizing figuring out how to pay for your prescriptions and not have to sell your home and getting enough food, and then maybe also tracking down, you know, kids, it's not even going to be a priority to call and complain about your taxes, right? So I respect what you're saying, but I'm just trying to figure out a way to not give up revenue, right? But then also create a framework where it's a little less burdensome for some of the complaints we've received. So appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions and discussion? Okay, we are now moving forward to registered remote testifiers. We don't have any registered testifiers. But is there anyone else online who wishes to testify? Seeing none, we will now move on to in-person testifiers. We don't have any registered in-person testifiers, but is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify? Okay, we have one. Please state your name for the record, and you have a minute.
Aloha, Angela Melody Young Hears. Wishing to comment, so the policy, if enacted, will create a new schedule in the Chapter 8-3.2 relating to taxes and delinquent dates. So for flexibility to accommodate all the citizens of Honolulu. So it's a good idea to assess the internal procedures and how it affects enacting of a new policy. So I think the PIG, the Permitted Interaction Group meeting, is a good idea. And this concern I raised up in the prior PIG hearing is that Hawaii is the only state in which it does not have real property tax to support the public school system. So that's a state function, right? And you're legislating a city mechanism in real property tax. In all the other states, it does have real property tax to support the Department of Education public school systems.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none, members, we are back in discussion. Oops. Okay. Okay, I guess if there's no other discussion, Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
I just would say that if, in fact, this does move forward, that I hope that we recognize the need for increased staff in the administration of this. I just wanted to make that comment. The other bills were looking at raising revenue or anything. This is just creating an administrative burden for the budget and fiscal services. And I would like to think that given a lot of our challenges working with them, we want to make everything smooth. Yeah. So I'm just suggesting that should this move forward in the process, that we factor that into next year's budget.
Thank you. Director Kohan, I just want to give a shout out to your team downstairs. There's some real property division, or I don't know, but Treasury maybe? I don't know, division that's really just filtering people in at expeditious amount of time that I'm seeing. And I'm seeing it on social media that people are like saying, commenting that there's, not commenting, but I'm saying, hey, this guy when I was paying my real property taxes, just vacuuming them out really good. I don't know his name, but I don't want to pinpoint each staff member, but this particular young man in general is doing an amazing job, and I saw that on Facebook. So I just wanted to say thank you to your whole team downstairs. I know the lines are long every single part of this day during this time of the year, and so shout out to your team.
Thank you very much. They'll appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to kick it over to Vice. Well, first off, I do share the same concerns with BFS, but I will kick it off over to. Oh wait, I'm so sorry, Councilmember Toba.
Thank you, Chair. I echo Vice Chair Kia, and I have reservations on this bill too.
Thank you very much. Okay, sorry, Committee Vice Chair Wire. It's a long day. A meeting, I mean.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Director, so I was just curious, in terms of some of the testimony we received asking about maybe doing like monthly payments, has the department looked at that as an option?
I think doing monthly payments will create even more work because we still have to input and track every payment that's made. So anything's possible, but there's going to be a cost.
What if it was required to opt into monthly, you did direct deposit or direct payment? That'd be cheaper, right, staff-wise?
Yeah, and again, it would be perhaps easier for the taxpayers. Maybe not, because if they have monthlies, you're going to have some that forget, and we're going to have to determine, how does interest accrue?
Yeah.
Does it accrue as each monthly amount become due, or are we going to accrue it as of a specific date?
Yeah.
During the year? All of that's going to have to be figured out. So to me, it creates more complexity.
Yeah.
And again, you can always prepay. So when you get your semi-annual bill, you can pay smaller amounts up to the due date, right, of the bill.
Till February, I think it is. Till February.
Yeah, you get your bill about a month or so in advance. You can make 2 payments and even 3 payments if need be, to get your taxes paid.
Yeah, with all of it in by February.
Yeah, and I'm a lot more aware of what you're bringing up because through the mayor's town halls, we're not immune to what how people feel. Some of the people feel they're struggling to pay their property taxes. We know that. Yeah.
Appreciate that. How many folks that have the 65 and older exemption have outstanding mortgages?
I knew that when we were going through the budget. If I recall right, I think here the scary part is it's split. It's about 50-50.
Okay.
We're older as a population. So in terms of homeowners with home exemptions, I think it's about 50-50.
Okay.
And like I said, that's why it's good that we have the real property tax credit program because there has to be some kind of income level factor that plays into a tax break, whether it's a credit or exemption, because when you're talking about half the population of homeowners with home exemptions, many can afford to pay their taxes and pay on time, and they should, like I will be in a few years. I'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Last question is I know we have other items. Okay, would it be easier then if we just attach the interest waiver to folks that maybe have a low-income tax credit? So folks right now, those that are qualifying is 80,000 or below.
I would have to analyze that.
Okay, maybe, yeah.
Not sure.
I'll throw that out. I'm open to collaboration. I think that's where most of our solutions are. And I think as long as everyone is coming forward with data and willing to share data and, I know we've had trouble in the past, right? Like trying to decide, do we have to do a FOIA request like we did for,
I think as a general rule for the real property assessment team, in terms, because they typically share data more than Treasury.
Yeah.
What would be good, what I would recommend is that if they're asked to provide data, there should be a bill, there should be a measure introduced, because if they're running data at will, at the whim of any council member at any time, it's going to bog them down, from their day-to-day. So there should be a measure that we're
But that's an
seriously
individual
considering.
conversation to have, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Not to set up, like that would be a normal conversation. You would call someone up and share. Not just give a blanket rule that, oh, we're only going to provide the council data if they do a permanent interaction group, or, oh, we're only going to do it under these circumstances.
Well, I think
Right, because I think when you start hiding data, that's when folks start to question the intent.
we don't hide anything, but when we
No, I'm not saying, I'm just saying that, yeah, there was a statement, not a question.
Yeah. So
Okay,
the
so I
permit-
appreciate that. I'll
Yeah.
turn it back over to Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Say.
Madam Chair, on a very joyful note, Director Kawano directed me in paying my real property tax. As I was waiting in line downstairs in the rotunda, he saw me in line. He told me, Calvin, just go to the drop-off box on the side of the Treasury office. And I did that. So thank you very much. But I also want to compliment your real property tax assessment division on Bethel Street. I did take a tour to say thank you to all of those individuals also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, if no further discussion, I would like to kick it over to Vice Chair Wire for the motion.
No further discussion on my end.
For the motion.
Yeah, I'll defer to the committee. I know that some of my colleagues had concerns, and I know BFS had said they're gonna maybe provide some additional data or additional language. And so I'll defer to the chair's inclination. So I'm okay if we defer it. I'll defer, or in welcome input from my co-introducer, Councilmember Okimoto as well, so I don't want to speak for both of us.
No, thank you, Committee Vice Chair Wire. I think I'm on the same page. If we have discussion that needs to occur, and Director Kawano mentioned that he would provide further written testimony, that will be helpful, because I think what we're looking for is to find some kind of way to make this work, if there's any way, and I appreciate you asking the questions that you did. So if we need to postpone it to a time that's better for the committee chair, and with the input that we can get from Director Kawano and others, that would be, I'm okay with that as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think my main concern is just ensuring that there's open communication. And so BFS has indicated today that they're going to be open to having the dialogue and going through data that's applicable to this particular bill and open to amending it. And so I'll take them at that word, their word on that. And so I'm okay holding it now. Yeah.
Holding it, okay. All right, with that, I do want to, you don't have to come, Director Kawano, but I think, I did see, you did mention that you do have testimony you have to provide to us. If you could ask that for us at least 24 hours in advance so we can check them out and then ask certain questions that are pertinent to the discussion, that would be good. Okay, thank you. Members, then, thank you to both the introducers for being here and for the robust discussion that we had. We will, the chair recommends that action on Bill 43, 2024 be postponed to a date and time to be determined by the chair. Any discussion? Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, the measure is postponed. Moving forward is last item, agenda item number 9, Bill 45, addressing the real property tax credit. As one of the introducers, basically this is what we've seen in the last fiscal year, not last, 2 fiscal years ago, where we changed the 3% from $60,000 to $80,000 and now up to $100,000. So that's the technical part of the bill, but I would like to kick it over to my co-introducer as well as my committee vice chair Wire for further.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I think it stems just from last year's conversation, where we went through this conversation. I know BFS didn't like our $450,000 homeowner exemption, but I bought into their argument that really one of the ways to best serve our most struggling families is through the low-income tax credit. And when you look at what the AMI is right now, right, for two-person family with a kid, that's $100,000, $90,000 for a two-person household. And I know we went through the conversation last year about why tying it to AMI would be more difficult for the department, largely because, it changes every year. As the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development puts out their area median income numbers for Honolulu, and of course it's going to continue to go up. And so really just the gist was identifying that if you are lower moderate income, I think it's reasonable to cap your taxes at 3% of your income, particularly if you're, living in a generational home. So yeah, that's kind of the overview. So it'd be raising it to $100,000.
Thank you. I do want to thank our Council Vice Chair Kia Aina for introducing that former bill that did bring us up to the $80,000 in Ordinance 23-20, Ordinance 23-22. Sorry, and which was originally Bill 37. And with that, we have from the administration, Director Kawano.
Yes, Andy Kawano, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services again, and I apologize. We have written testimony that will be received shortly by all of you with regard to Bill 45. We know this bill works. With regard to this bill, we have to be aware of the fact that administratively, all of the applications are manually reviewed and vetted, with documentation as they come through for the real property tax credit. This year, after increasing the title holder income limit to $80,000, we went from about 3,500 applications processed to just over 5,000. The tax credit dollars provided in the past was about $5 million, just over $5 million. This year, we're projecting that taxpayers will get an aggregate credit come next year, when it goes into effect, of more than $9.5 million. So it almost doubled. So, we have to be aware that when we increase the title holder income limit from 80,000 to 100,000, there could be, 1,500 to, just projecting out 2,000 more applications, and perhaps, a tax credit aggregate benefit to taxpayers of, instead of close to $10 million, maybe $15 million, could be more. So there is a fiscal impact we have to consider. So the concern we have is with everything else, while this bill works, we need to consider the fiscal impact, and that's why it'll be good to discuss it in PIG. Also, I want to thank council members for mentioning earlier that they would consider increasing staff, because if we move forward with this bill, we're going to have to increase staff because of the fact that our miscellaneous receivables unit essentially reviews every application. They touch every application that gets turned in. And at some point, we got to figure out how to automate some of the process, but it's quite manual right now.
Thank you. And for the automation of the process, I know that it was a discussion when I wanted to introduce a resolution about the software system back in 2021. I didn't get a hearing, but I know that I guess it's just been a request for at least when majority of the council was new to the council. I guess in the future, will we be able to get an update on when we can get that automation or software updates, as well as, I guess, the amount of increased applications that, I guess, were increased from 60,000 to 80,000? Would be good to know, too.
Yeah, we can share information that we have. We're not at the tip of the spear in terms of, including all of the most current updates our current vendor can provide.
Yeah. Because we have the same vendor as Maui County.
I believe all the counties are on the same
All the
platform.
same.
Yeah, and
Are they just like different versions or years or something like that?
I think we're all about the same. We're
really?
the same now. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But we're on the same platform. But I'm sure that Honolulu and the other counties, we're not at the tip of the spear in terms of having everything that they have available.
Yeah.
And that's something we can talk about, look at, cost out, determine, how much it'll take to implement properly. Yeah, and again, we're very, very careful with any kind of upgrade because of the fact of the real property tax program being so important to the city, and the fact that we have to track, assess, and service more than 300,000 parcels, throughout the island. I don't think the other counties have the same amount of work that we have to do, in terms of parcel count. So
yeah, no, I definitely have seen that, but I do appreciate that you saying that this bill works. When the main takeaways from the discussions in the last PIG and in the report was like that this was one of the bigger ways we can assist people, as the committee vice chair mentioned. So that's why I want to support this bill even moving forward, so we can continue to talk about it. But that's just my point. Council Vice Chair Kiaina.
Thank you. Director, thank you for your comments, and I am in receipt of your letter to the chair and the committee members. So you said potentially this could increase maybe 1,500 to 2,000, right? You're just guesstimating based, and the potential costs, it went from 5 million to 9.5, but it could go upwards to maybe 15 million.
or more. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so clearly, I think we can actually all concur that this is one of the more solid programs. And so I guess for me then, it is a matter of, you guys talked about how you did not like how we tied it to, was it inflation? Our cost of living. We had tried to, and you said that it was uncertain for your team. So then for me, it's a matter of timing of when do you make it operative or effective. Is it, so barring the staffing, because we could address that, is it a matter of timing then for you that you don't want it to apply? Does this bill apply to the next fiscal year?
It does not. It's effective 7/1/26.
Oh, okay. So my question to you is, in between these increases, what is a reasonable time? Because the last one took effect, what was the year that it took effect?
It's in this year.
Yeah, but 24, so that would be a 2-year gap. Is that not a fair time for projecting?
If this bill is being seriously considered,
Yes.
and you hear out our concerns, and thank you for reading out what our concerns are, I think the effective date is fair.
Fair, right?
Yeah,
As opposed to
we'll
doing
have time to
2027.
communicate. We'll have time to
Okay.
make system changes for the
Okay.
new limit. But again, it's
Okay.
yeah, we have to.
No,
we have to review
following
other
this logic, so first of all,
measures.
thank you. And so Chair, I guess out of all of the bills right now, this is one of the ones that I feel most solid in, but of course, I am concerned just about how it operates, but that's why we're having this dialogue. Having said that, this is only for those who are, it's either for the income threshold. And I guess, we like to look at it in tandem of increasing the homeowner exemption. And in our mind, strategically, we need to think about that so that we have a date certain on when people will know that their homeowner's exemption will increase as well, in tandem with this, because we did them in tandem, remember? As well as those who are 65 or older. And so if we revisit this in the context of a PIG or another bill, I wouldn't mind having a date certain when all homeowners will know with certainty when their homeowner's exemption will be lifted, will increase as well. Because this is 20,000. And so the next one will likely be 20,000 more, right? It'll go from, it's 120,000 now, go to 140,000, and then for 65 and older, it go from 160 to 180. I'm just thinking out loud since we're bringing all of this up. But it is one of the most solid ones, I just wanted to say, so I don't mind it moving forward, and if there's a concern with the effective date, then we can work with it, but if it's 2 years down the road, you know?
Yeah, so it'll, the changes will be effective, so that's fiscal 27, right? July 1st, 2026. But the credit is determined as of December of that fiscal year, and it's not provided until the following fiscal year. So taxpayers, we're going to have to communicate that, you don't get the credit in that year that it becomes effective. It's provided to taxpayers the following year.
Yes, but you can work on that. But I guess for me, it's the effective date. So if you have concerns over that, then as this process moves forward, you need to express it.
Yeah, I do agree that we need a set income level, because if we allow it to vary with changes in AMI, provided by HUD, it's going to cause confusion, not just among us, but among taxpayers as well. So it's good to have a fixed limit.
Yes, I agree. And then speaking of AMI, I think we need to haul HUD in here and talk about the AMI as applies to Hawaii and how they have it wrong. And how we need to fix that, because we use that and they need to factor in how out of control it is for Hawaii.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Director Kawano, for this information. Members, any discussion? Council Chair Watt.
Thank you. While I appreciate the intent of the bill, I think we have to be mindful of next year's collective bargaining is coming up, as well as we still have to account for hazard pay. I'm not sure 120 million is going to be enough for hazard pay. It already is $4.5 million more than it was the previous year as far as income loss. So I just think we need to be cautious. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, we also discussed hazard pay extensively in this committee, and also talked about how much longer we would need to either push out hazard pay if we can pay it off in 2 years or not, and then seeing the impact, and then the catch up we would have to do in the following 3 fiscal years after this as well. And I know that the recommendation from the budget director was to have the permanent interaction group. And then I think different members stated different ideas, but then I came back with, then our permanent interaction group should be focused on revenue enhancement. So I just wanted to reiterate that for everyone. And I hope that if there's another permanent interaction group about everything in general, I would also want another one for revenue enhancements. With that, members, any other discussion? Hold on, Council Vice Chair Kiana?
On this bill or in general?
I guess on this bill. I think I've been kind of lenient on the discussion. Committee Vice Chair Wire.
No, I was just going to say we'll be talking about revenue enhancement tomorrow if folks want to join in at Housing Committee.
Okay, let's get more. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Council Vice Chair Kiana, do you want to say something?
Are we moving this forward?
Oh, I was just gonna, I'm just hearing discussion about the bill first.
Oh, got it. Okay, I don't have a problem with moving this forward.
Isn't this first reiteration?
Yes, but I would like to say something in general about RPT. Should I do it now or later?
Just don't name any bills. Don't name any bills.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay, all I know is there are a lot of universe of other RPT bills. So if in fact we are trying to move things forward, I happen to have some relating to residential A as well as long-term. And I would like to have a hearing on it if in fact that's what's going on. Otherwise, I could wait patiently for when we have the RPT permitted interaction group. I just want to make sure that the universe of our all RPT bills are on the table, and not just the ones that we're having hearings on today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being cautious with not naming any bills. Members, any discussion? Okay. Do you have a suggestion on the motion? Vice Chair Wire?
Did you want me to make a motion?
Just asking, so I can make a motion.
Yeah, I mean, I think out of all the
Oh, yeah, that's right.
all the bills, this was probably the one I felt was most appropriate out of the ones we've worked on in terms of installments and other aspects, just given where our area median income is right now. I think in my mind, if you're asking my opinion, it would be to pass it out because I think this plus empty home tax would satisfy me. I know other folks have other bills pending, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. And I guess the point is, and I don't know where Chair Waters is trying to, I guess we need enhancements anyway, but if we're looking for any tax credits or tax exemptions, maybe we come up with other tax enhancements to offset the tax credits or exemptions that we're proposing in the future, maybe. Yeah, okay, so with that, Council Vice Chair
Well, that's a good point. Well, that would be what the RPT permitted interaction group would do. I think that, I know that the vacancy tax bill is very popular, and so for those revenue generating bills, we should move vehicles, measures that provide some relief. And that's how we do it. I do know that there's thought out there to have the funds from any vacancy bill go to the Affordable Housing Fund, and we had that opportunity on a question on the Charter Commission. For me, I would rather use the offsets from any vacancy tax that we raise, tax revenue generating bills, to offset some of these other measures that have costs.
Thank you.
So we could do it at the same time in the permitted interaction group and recommend both.
We can talk about it tomorrow too.
Wait, I need to call on you. Could you state your, wait, Council Vice Chair Keanu, can you state your last statement? I didn't hear you.
I guess I'm just saying that it doesn't have one or the other. I'm envisioning a RPT permitted interaction group as looking to raise revenues as well as to talk about the impacts of bills that will have costs, like for what we just discussed. And so it's not one or the other. But I guess I just want to say that for any of the revenue generating bills, I am not so inclined to think that all of those funds will go to the Affordable Housing Fund. I believe it should go to offset measures that are going to cost us, so it'd be budget neutral.
Thank you very much. Okay, Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess just in that sentiment, in terms of the agenda item and just discussing the implication of the permitted interaction group, I do think we should move the bill forward, but I do understand, once we start the PIG, if it's not passed out, we'd kind of be stuck right until we have an outcome on reporting from the PIG. Is that's a fair representation?
It really depends on the scope. I don't want to, it's not introduced yet, so I don't want to, and also you have a resolution for the PIG too, so I don't want to state one way or another, but we can always, in discussion, when I do agendize the resolution, either resolution, yours or mine, about the scope of work of what we decide. As you know, you heard my thoughts of the scope of work for one of, could be multiple PIGs, and yeah. I don't know. We can talk about that later.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just share that because in the context of all the bills, and again, staying to the one we're talking about on the agenda, I haven't necessarily been contemplating the analysis in terms of, oh, am I supporting this bill moving forward, understanding that we'll do a PIG after, or am I anticipating this bill being a part of a PIG discussion, if that makes sense. And so just throwing that out there in terms of future analysis that we do as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to remote testifiers. We don't have any registered remote testifiers, but is there anyone in person and online who wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none, we don't have any registered in-person testifiers, but is there anyone in person who wishes to testify? Okay, please proceed.
Angela Melody Young, CARES. So wishing to comment, so there was a lot of options to consider with property tax, and so I'm very interested in another PIG hearing to consider discussions and input from the real estate market, where we learned in our class, average median income is a government terminology. It's a housing and urban development terminology, and government structures income levels to label low income versus high income at the level the government determines. And after learning this, I think there can be consideration the council can talk to the real estate market about this 100,000 number, because I'm curious if there were consultations with industry professionals in the real estate market, or if where it's at now at the 100,000 is an arbitrary number, and how does it affect home ownership? Because we can't see the numbers from the real estate market, right, in this discussion, and how it determines income levels or supply and demand of homes. So an owner in this bill says the owner is entitled to a credit provided if, as it explains, the combination of income of owner does not exceed $100,000. So when a buyer goes to assess the value of the home, the value is higher.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in person who wishes to testify? Seeing none. Okay, members, we're back in discussion. Okay, moving forward, I mean, with the discussion, I do think it would be good to have a discussion with HUD. I think, maybe not in my committee, maybe in, I don't know, Council Vice Chair Keaina, where would you like to have such
Well, I
discussion?
guess I would just share that the regional director will be here for the Hawaii State Association of Counties. We're having a federal panel. We're having a federal a federal grants opportunities panel on economic development, housing, and infrastructure. And so how about we work with his team and the Honolulu team to see about a informational briefing by one of your committees. That's what I would recommend.
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you. And I just want to ensure that all of the council members, Honolulu is hosting HSAC. I don't know if all of you are going. Yeah? Okay, cool, perfect. Okay, with that, the chair recommends, I forgot what I was doing. The chair recommends that Bill 45, 2024 be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing.